Okay, in this demonstration I'm going to show you certificate-based authentication against Active Directory Federation services for Zscaler Internet Access and Zscaler Private Access. And I'm going to show you this on, I'm going to start with Windows, we're going to do a Mac, we're going to do an iPhone, we're going to talk about what's going on, and we're going to talk about re-authentication as well. So on the Windows machine, just to kind of demonstrate, we've got a certificate. It's got a private key, it's a use certificate, it tells me things about who issued it, it tells me my subject, I'm Ryan at welshgeek.net. It gives me my CRL distribution point for certificate revocation, so it'll go off and check that the user is valid and able to authenticate and nothing else has happened untoward. So that's all good. The workstation has got no Kerberos tickets, although it's part of the domain. I've cleared all of those out. And we know that certificate authentication will work because if we go to https samlsp.private zscaler.com auth to domain. So this is the test URL. This is going to trigger an SP-initiated single sign-on from Zscaler. It's going to pull back all of my attributes. It's going to tell me some groups that I'm a member of. This one here, I'm specifically returning auth method reference that tells me that I did TLS client, so SSO, an X509 certificate authentication. So it gives me everything that I need to know about the user and tells me that certificate authentication is occurring. Now, the important thing to really realize is that Zscaler App is using a containerized browser, essentially. So anything that the browser on the workstation can do, Zscaler App can do. So certificate authentication works in your browser. It'll work in Zscaler App on Windows, Mac, or OS X, Android, and iOS. So that's just the brief setup. So here's what we're going to do, just to confirm we didn't get any, we did get some Kerberos tickets whilst we were doing that. And the reason why we got those Kerberos tickets is because it then needed to go off and get to the certificate revocation lists to check all of that, or it could be something that was going on in the background as part of Windows updates. Okay, so if we go ahead and we launch Zscaler, Zscaler is deployed using MDM, in this case Intune. It launches, it's already got the configuration profiles of which cloud I'm on and what my domain is, so the transparency means that the app will automatically redirect to the IDP, sign into the IDP using the certificate authentication, and then it'll go ahead and minimize itself down to the system tray. It says there, great, I'm signed into Zscaler. And private access. And I'm going to make a note of the time, 10:46 or 11:46, because I put in a specific timer to show what's going, to force me to re-authenticate after 10 minutes. So just to demonstrate, before we start off that timer, if I ping adfs.welshgeek.net, which is the ADFS server, if I could type, I've got fat fingers. That's a Zscaler private access application, and I can also access my Apache server, it's also a private access application. So we'll go ahead and we'll just do one of those, http apache.welshgeek.net. It's coming via Zscaler private access, and it's running in this case, AWS. So that's all working fine. So I'm going to leave that there. 11:47 is the timer. That's or 11:46 for the 10-minute authentication timeout. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple of other things. The first thing I'm going to do is on the Mac. By the way, ignore the screenshot because that's coming. That's my iPhone, which I'm sharing the screen of in a second. So on the Mac, again, I've got the certificate. I've got the user certificate, similar kind of thing. Tells tells me about certificate revocation lists and everything. And I've got a corresponding private key. One thing that might be of interest is that there is a specific identity preference. You can come in here, all items. Like this. This is giving me the ability to. We want to look for an identity preference, and the identity preference that's set here says essentially anything that's star.welshgeek.net automatically send the certificate Mark Ryan for the authentication. So there's a preference that's needed specifically on Mac for Safari to choose a specific certificate, because you might have multiple certificates on your device and you want to send one specific certificate for one web service and a different certificate for a different web service. So I've got an identity preference, I've got my certificates, and we know what's going on. So there's a couple of things we can do. I can go back to that HTTPS SAML SP private auth v2 login. There we go. That's whoa. That's not what I want. Ignore that. Login v domain equals welshgeek.net. SSO type equals test. We'll do exactly the same thing. It'll redirect to the ADFS server, certificate authentication, and here again it says TLS client X509 authentication. Everything we already showed on Windows. So let's go ahead and launch Zscaler. Zscaler again automatically knows what domain I'm on, what cloud, triggers the TLS authentication, authenticates to ZIA first, then ZPA, fingerprints the device, registers and enrolls into Zscaler. Again, we can open that up and we know everything that's going on. Give it a second. There we go. We're on the trusted network. ZPA is on. ZIA is on. All well and good. So I'm going to exit that because I don't want that to still be running. And what we're going to do is we're going to do this exactly the same test on the iPhone, because I think it's important to see this across multiple devices. So on the iPhone, under General, Profiles, I've got my certificate. Similar kind of thing. It is mryan@welshgeek.net. We can see the distribution points, the certificate revocation points, and everything in there. I'm not going to show you the browser. I don't think. I probably could. SAML. In fact, I might even be able to. SAML sp.private zscaler.com auth. Should hang on. HTTPS is important. Similar process, and here we can see the TLS client next 509. So exactly the same on this device. So let's go ahead and launch Zscaler. Again, Zscaler provisioned with the cloud name and everything. SAML authentication occurs, certificate-based authentication, logged in, registered, and I'm now able to be enrolled into Zscaler Internet Access and Private Access. So, all well and good. We get certificate authentication across all the devices. So let's go ahead and come back to my Parallels desktop here, because we want to. The reason why I've talked a bit is to get this across the line in terms of re-authentication. We're nearly 10 minutes late, later from when we started. Let's click refresh on this page. With a bit of luck, let's try something else. DC2. All of these have not triggered the re-authentication timer, so maybe we'll give it a little bit longer for re-authentication to kick in. What we want to happen is that the user goes to access a resource. Their timeout period has been triggered. So here we know we triggered 11:46, so maybe a little bit longer. Let's go ahead and come back into the private access and just run through what we've got configured here. So in the IDP configuration, I've just simply got ADFS WellSpeak.net ADFS LS. That's what I'm going to authenticate to. I then have in my timeout policy here, what I'm saying is anything that's the ADFS server should never be prompted to re-authenticate and never idle, and everything else has a 10-minute authentication timeout. So after 10 minutes, I'll have to re-authenticate. What I'm trying to do is trigger that re-authentication. We go into our diagnostics. We can see a couple of things. Here was my user accessing the domain controller, and it's telling me everything I need to know about the user and the device. So Zscaler App. If we take a look at the ADFS server, the ADFS server is only configured for certificate authentication. There's no forms-based authentication fallback, and there's no. And then if we look in Zscaler App, in the mobile portal, we can see that I've got the iOS device, I've got my Windows device, and I've got my Mac device, and I can see details of all of this. I've got the host name and username disabled in this for GDPR, but I could always capture that if I needed it for other log retention. So let's go to, now we've hit the it says, hey, you need to re-authenticate. So let's do a couple of things. So just going to run that. It's are available, but I want to demonstrate that the private access. I'm going to click re-authenticate. We'll very quickly see the certificate re-authentication. We'll come back here.